Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And we have David Jockers of the Fasting Transformation. And we are going to have so many great topics. We're going to be talking about advanced nutrition strategies all around your hormonal health. We're going to talk about how to lengthen your fasting without ruining your hormones. And we're going to talk about how to lose more weight with your best digestion strategies for fat burning. So David, welcome.
Thank you, Chantel. It's an honor and a privilege. Looking forward to our conversation.
So let's start with talking about some advanced nutrition strategies, because I think that one of the biggest things people are having trouble with, and I know I am right now too, is my hormones are getting wonkier and wonkier. I'm in that transition phase. I'm kind of in that pre-menopause stage, and I definitely feel like my hormones have just gone wild. So talk about what you're really seeing with women in that era right now.
For sure. Well, blood sugar, our blood sugar, it needs to be kind of in a certain kind of equilibrium point or a homeostatic point. And when our blood sugar swings up or down, that's going to really impact hormones. We know that insulin is the hormone that comes out and takes sugar, puts it into the cells where it can be used for energy. And insulin is a life-saving hormone because, if blood sugar is elevated for a long period of time, the sugar molecules will bind to proteins in the blood and they'll create something called an advanced glycation end product, or an AGE. And so Chantel, AGE, what does that spell? Age, right? It ages us, accelerates the aging process, creates massive oxidative stress in the system. So insulin's trying to protect against that, and also obviously trying to help the cells utilize the sugar as a fuel source. And so we need to be eating in a way that keeps our blood sugar very stable throughout the day, as well as our insulin levels, keeping that very, very stable. If our blood sugar is going up and down and we're getting big swings, that's going to really impact our estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone production. And so when our blood sugar, when we have high insulin, for example, for some women, they'll develop high testosterone and develop a condition called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or also cystic acne, right? Where they get a lot of acne on their face. For other women, they end up with estrogen dominance. So depending on, kind of genetic tendencies for that woman, they might have too much testosterone, or they might have too much estrogen if their blood sugar and insulin are off. And if they have too much estrogen, then they end up with things like endometriosis, PMS, right? Different issues like that. And then, of course, as you get into perimenopause, like what you're talking about, get into perimenopause and then eventually into menopause, you actually oftentimes will end up, a lot of women will end up with too little estrogen and progesterone. And then they have hot flashes, they have night sweats, right? A lot of different issues like that, because at that point, the ovaries stop producing a lot of these hormones. And there's still a small level of production. In fact, almost every cell in your body produces some level of sex hormones, but it's not enough. And the body is prioritizing stress. So when your blood sugar is off, it's a major stressor on the body. And the body always prioritizes stress hormones over sex hormones. And so if your stress hormones are high and your body's saying, hey, I need stress hormones because I'm trying to survive, that is a priority over sex hormones and all the different benefits that sex hormones give us, like growth and repair and healthy skin, healthy hair, things like that. Those things are great, but they're not going to, help us survive in an immediate acute crisis, right? Whereas stress hormone does. And so if you're under a lot of stress, like Chantel, you and I were just talking, you said you're under a lot of stress with your work. And so when you're under a lot of stress, that's almost like a bad diet, right? So when you're under a tremendous amount of stress, particularly for a long period of time, it's almost like eating bad foods, because that itself is going to cause blood sugar imbalances. Because when you're under a lot of stress, your body's producing a lot of cortisol, a lot of adrenaline to try to get blood sugar up. And that's because your body doesn't know the difference between you trying to, close a deal with your real estate company, prepare for an interview or whatever, is the major stressor that you're working on, and you're putting intense energy into it. You're running around, right? You're not really getting enough time to slow down, take deep breaths, whatever it is that's stressing you. Your body doesn't know the difference between that and you running away from, somebody with a spear, right? Or a lion or something like that, that's chasing you. And so you're, running for your life. And so because of that, your body's trying to prioritize, get more quick fuel in the blood. We know glucose is a quick energy source. Fat is an amazing energy source. We can produce an abundant amount of energy from burning fat, but it takes oxygen. We need oxygen to burn fat effectively. And if we're on the go, right? If we're in a survival mode, if we're running away from that, figurative lion, we're not going to have enough oxygen to produce enough energy from fat. So we need that glucose available. So the body's prepping for that. It's elevating blood glucose. And then since we're not really running, right? We're not really necessarily exercising, that glucose stays high. And so then what comes out? Insulin. Insulin comes out, brings the sugar into the cells. But when insulin's high, it turns up inflammation. Higher insulin will drive up, like we talked about, estrogen for a lot of women, create an estrogen to progesterone imbalance. And that can be an issue. For men, it will take estrogen. It will actually take testosterone. And there's an enzyme called aromatase. And aromatase converts testosterone into estrogen. And so for a lot of men, when they have a lot of stress, or if they're not eating well, they have blood sugar imbalances, high insulin, they end up with too much estrogen, right? And we call that male andropause. And for most men, like if you see a middle-aged man and he can't look down and see his feet, right? His belly is kind of covering it. That's a sign he's in andropause, right? He's going to be lower in testosterone, higher in estrogen. And so this is a significant issue. We know that blood sugar is so important for survival, but if we don't keep our blood sugar stable, that is going to dramatically impact our hormone expression and cause a lot of unwanted symptoms.
Yeah. And I think that, for men as well, like they don't realize that high blood sugar levels decrease testosterone production. And like you said, high blood sugar really affects every aspect of how well your body functions, including the production of testosterone. And for me, at one point, my testosterone, I got my labs done and my testosterone was abnormally low. And it was probably because of how much stress that I'm under. So right now I actually am taking a low dose of, compounded in the pharmacy, a low dose of testosterone and a low dose of progesterone, because both my progesterone and testosterone were extremely low. And so I have to take a little bit of that per day.
Yeah. And that makes sense. A lot of women, I talked about high testosterone, but for a lot of women, they end up with low testosterone. And testosterone is so important for mental function, really plays a big role with your dopamine pathways. So your goal setting, feeling good, feeling like you're accomplishing things. A lot of times that goes down. You start to feel more lethargic when you don't have the testosterone. Libido goes down. That goes down. Your ability to create lean body tissue, muscle mass, and be able to burn fat, that goes down as well. So for a lot of women, they are dealing with that lower testosterone, and that again is oftentimes the main contributor is blood sugar, insulin, and stress, right? And so getting those things under control can really help support that.
So what would you say is kind of like, I want to talk about kind of the fasting window for women for a minute. And then I want to talk about the fasting window for men, because I do feel like, me personally, as my hormones have kind of changed, my fasting window has had to lengthen, especially during, my time of the month and, just with my hormones changing. So talk a little bit about, shortening and lengthening your eating windows and what you've seen are kind of the best eating windows for men, the best eating windows for women in different parts of their life.
For sure. Well, I'll start out with men. Men are pretty easy when it comes to fasting. Men, obviously they have, times of the month. That's what I've heard. Right. But, it's definitely not as significant as women. And so for men, most men, it's pretty easy after about a week, of adapting to a 16 to 18 hour fast. I mean, they have it down. Right. So once, in the beginning, whenever your body is built to eat at certain periods of time and it loves consistency. So if you're eating at 8 a.m. every morning, eating a big breakfast, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, I'm going to start intermittent fasting, I'm not going to eat that breakfast, you are going to feel hungry in the beginning, right? At least for the first few days, but it's mostly a mental issue. It's not really a true physical hunger, and your body will adapt as long as you're getting, the calories you need in your eating window. So for most men, it's easy to get them doing a 16, 18 hour fast. The first 3-4 days may be uncomfortable, but by the end of the first week, they usually have it down. And they can easily do that on a daily basis, 16 to 18 hour fast, unless they're like an extreme athlete or something like that. And I love to see men get to, the place where they're able to do like a once a week, 24-hour fast. I think that's a really, really great strategy. Of course, if they're looking to lose more weight, incorporating exercise obviously is huge, but they may also do 2 or 3 24-hour fasts or one meal a day over the course of a week, right? So they may incorporate that more often. But for me, somebody like me that, I've never tried to lose weight, but I love the benefits of fasting for the human growth hormone benefits. It actually helps me build lean body tissue. I really do it for the inflammation reducing benefits. I just feel like my joints are healthier. My brain feels healthier when I'm fasting. And so this is something I incorporate on a regular basis. And I do a weekly 24-hour fast to really thrive, right? And be at my optimal. Now, when it comes to women, particularly women that are going through their menstrual cycle, we definitely have to be more delicate with it. So the first part of the menstrual cycle we call the follicular phase, right? And that's kind of when the ovaries are building up. So day 1 is your first day of menses, and up till day 14, which is ovulation. And then the latter half, 14 to 28, we call the luteal phase. Okay. And so during that kind of first day through, let's say 1 through 10, it's actually a great time to do intermittent fasting. It's a great time to go low carb. As you get a little bit closer to ovulation, you may, oftentimes with women, I'll have them do a little bit less fasting, like maybe a day or 2 before ovulation, and, eating a little bit more carbohydrates, right? Some root vegetables like beets, sweet potatoes, carrots, things like that. Right after ovulation, then you can go right back into intermittent fasting. You may even do an extended fast. Usually you feel really great kind of during that ovulation window. And then the week before your cycle, so roughly around day 21 or so, that is where your body's really, building up that uterine lining. And so you really want to make sure that you're getting enough free hormone, enough free estrogen. So basically consuming more carbohydrates. During that period of time, we're doing less intermittent fasting, consuming more carbohydrates, more protein, more calories in general. Most women notice that they just feel better. In fact, most women, if they're not doing that, will tell you that they have a lot of cravings that week before menstruation, that they just start having a lot more cravings. So consuming more healthy calories. Okay. So I don't recommend going out to Krispy Kreme or something like that, but instead consuming, getting more carbohydrates, more calories from, good, clean pieces of protein, pieces of meat, healthy fats, and then doing sweet potatoes, root vegetables, right, are usually good, and fruit as well. So doing berries, avocados, doing oranges, grapefruit, right? Different things like that. So you're getting a little bit more carbohydrates during that window. And you'll notice that you tend to feel better and you have less PMS symptoms when you're able to do that. So that's usually how we do it. And if you follow that, it should really allow you to get more insulin sensitive. So that first, 10, 12, 13 days of your cycle is a great time, again, to go low carb, intermittent fasting. And that's going to really help improve your insulin sensitivity. So then you carb cycle out for, let's say, a day or 2, right around ovulation. And then, you go right back into intermittent fasting, okay, lower carb diet for another week. And then you're doing like a week basically where you're kind of more in a feasting phase, right? Now, not trying to overfill your body purposely, but kind of eating intuitively, right? And just kind of following your natural cravings, but choosing healthier foods. Okay. And I think if you do that, you'll notice less PMS symptoms, that you'll just feel better all throughout the month.
Hey guys, I want to tell you about a product that I'm completely obsessed with right now. It's called Bioptimizers, and one of them is called Magnesium Breakthrough. And the reason why I love it so much is because it has all 7 forms of magnesium in one bottle. It literally upgrades virtually every function in your body, like helps you with your sleep, helps you with stress, which I'm under a lot of stress right now, working a lot. And then the second one is called Magnesium, and it's a really potent enzyme blend for digestive function. And so we literally did a test with this. It was so cool with steak. And then we put the Magnesium in there and it literally broke down the steak. So if you're like getting tired after you're eating, you need this because it will optimize your digestion and really help you with absorption and absorbing those nutrients. So I have really good news. If you go to magbreakthrough.com/Chantel Ray, that's magbreakthrough.com/Chantel Ray, you will get a discount code. You've got to try it. I love it. Yeah, it's funny because I have really kind of interviewed a lot of women, and some women say like kind of day 1 through 7, they feel like they can really do great on doing extended fasting. But then I have a lot of women that say really day 15 through 21 is the days that they feel like they can do a lot in that luteal phase because it occurs right after ovulation, but it's enough time before your period starts. But here's the reason why I think a lot of people day 15 to 21 is because your progesterone levels are so much higher during that day 15 to 21. For me personally, as I've gotten a little bit older, when my progesterone levels are not where they need to be, it's very difficult for me to fast. And so that's why, that day 15 to 21, that's, day 21, they say is when your peak of progesterone is. So day 15 to 21 would make sense. But then there's some people who say, no, women that say, day 1 through 7 of my period, for me, I don't think that's my best time, but everyone's a little bit different. So yeah, definitely. I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, every woman is a little bit different, but I hear the same as you that usually right around ovulation or latter half, and then into that luteal phase, the beginning of luteal phase is when women tend to feel like they are, on top of the world. They feel great during that period of time.
Well, and I think everyone can agree that the 7 days before your period starts, don't even think about fasting. Everyone agrees on that. Everyone knows that's not the time to do any kind of fasting. That's not the time to do low carb. It's just not good for the men in your life. It's not good for you. It's not good for anyone. Everyone agrees on that.
Now, I will say most women can do like a 12 or 14-hour fast, almost like an overnight fast. And that's usually what I'll recommend during that window, is like an 8 to 10 hour eating window, right? Some women I've noticed, they are still able to do an 8-hour eating window as long as you're consuming enough protein and carbs, right? And calories are very, very important. For other women, a 10-hour window works really, really good for them during that cycle. And for some women, particularly very, very lean women, they might need a 12-hour eating window, right? From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., let's say, and what I find with fasting is, for the people that are, particularly the hardest demographic is your very, very lean women who are already low body fat. And then they're also like exercising intensely and they're stressed. They're a mom, they've got a career, whatever it is. You kind of stack those things. And then they think, I'm going to do, all this intermittent fasting. I'm going to do 1 meal a day. And it just overstresses their system. Right. So that's what I find. But any level of stress, right? So like if you are under a lot of stress, you have to understand that intermittent fasting is a stressor as well.
Yes.
And kind of like exercise, and if you're somebody who's exercised regularly, you felt that at times where you feel like, I might be overtraining. I might be doing a little too much exercise. It's the same with fasting, right? You can overwhelm your system. You want to prime your system, strengthen, create more resiliency, but you don't want to overwhelm your system with it. So your body needs kind of a cycle where, there's times where it knows that, okay, nutrient needs are met. We're in a place of surplus here. Things are good. we can build and grow. Right. And then also at the same time, it needs, to be in periods of time where it's like, okay, we're in a famine. So we need to be more efficient with our energy. We need to break down more body fat, more of this, go into our savings account basically and start to use our body fat for fuel. We need to break down damaged proteins in our cells through this process of autophagy and start to break those down and utilize those materials to rebuild cellular structures, to rebuild different protein-based structures within our cell. So we need to be cycling back and forth between those two places. And depending on the individual, their stress level, their body fat, their exercise level, how well they're sleeping, that can slightly differ, right? There can be variations in that. And that's the key, is really kind of finding the right variation for you in the season that you're in with the unique, stress bucket that you have.
Well, I want to hear kind of a day in the life of, or a day in the week of David Jockers. Like, what are some of the extended fasting that you're doing? What are you eating on a regular basis for you to feel like you have the most optimal nutrition for yourself right now?
Yeah, for sure. Well, as far as extended fasting, I don't do it much, right? Because I'm very, very lean. I'm very active. So I'll do like a 3 to 5 day fast once a year. Okay. But what I do is throughout the week, I'm doing most days an 18-hour fast. And then one day a week, I'm doing like a 20 to 24-hour fast. So usually on Wednesday, I eat lunch and then I don't eat again until Thursday lunch. And I work out very intensely before I break that fast. So Wednesday is a rest day. I don't work out. So that's a good day for kind of a more extended fast. And then Thursday, right at the end of my fast, before I break it, I work out real intensely. And then after that, probably 20 minutes after I finish, I'll break my fast. So that's kind of typically how I do it. Every now and then, maybe once a month or something like that, I'll have, maybe breakfast or something like that. But it's extremely rare that I do that. And so that might be like on a Saturday, something like that. Usually Saturdays, I'm having a little bit more carbs. And the way that I would say my quote unquote cheat food would be, we get this Against the Grains pizza that is amazing. My kids love it. Right. And so we put on like turkey pepperoni, we put on olives and onions and stuff like that. And we cook that up and it tastes amazing. So I do that. But on a regular basis, I'm eating, typically for lunch, I'm eating either leftovers from the night before, or I'm having like a big protein shake with avocado, lots of protein powder in there. I use either grass-fed raw milk or coconut milk, and I'll put some berries, some frozen berries in it, and some C8 MCT oil, which turns immediately into ketones in your system. So I'll put that in there, have a great protein shake. I might have like a little bit of dark chocolate, something along those lines with it. So that's usually lunch. It's either leftovers or it's like a protein shake like that. And then dinner is lots of meat. So grass-fed beef. We do a lot of that. We'll do cheeseburgers where we do grass-fed beef and grass-fed cheese that we melt on it, and no bun, of course. We'll do Brussels sprouts. I make this Mediterranean salad a lot where we dice up cucumbers, artichokes, hearts of palm, bell peppers, tomatoes. What else is in there? Black olives, sometimes green olives, onions, and we just put a ton of olive oil on it, lemon juice, and a lot of herbs, right? Basil, oregano, thyme, things like that. It tastes great. And so I eat that a lot. We'll do Brussels sprouts, asparagus, right? Different types of veggies like that. And I eat a lot of meat, right? So I'll eat, easily half a pound or something like that of grass-fed beef, maybe more sometimes, depending on how hungry I am. And then one of my favorite desserts is I'll get some organic yogurt, and I'll put in, we have a strawberry collagen protein that I'll put in there. So it kind of has a strawberry flavor. And then I'll put in some, there's a brand, Perfect Keto. You may be familiar with them. So they have a new cereal. So I'll put like a little bit of their cereal in there. I grew up eating cereal, right? So, so since, over the last 20 years, I've eaten very little cereal, right? And so I'm kind of excited about this. So I put a little bit of that. It's got a great crunch in it and they have healthier ingredients in it. And I'll put in like some nuts, like some cashews or something, and some berries in there, some strawberries or raspberries, blueberries, whatever. And then I'll just mix that up and I'll have that. My kids love it. I love it. So that's kind of like a healthy dessert that I'll have oftentimes. And that's usually what we're doing, right? So I tend to eat a high protein, high healthy fat, lower carb diet. And my body, my metabolic type, I need a lot of calories, right? And I exercise a lot too, right? So I'm working out 5 days a week. And then I'm also active, even on my off days, just running around with my kids, playing sports with my kids. My body type, I need to be active. I really enjoy it. And I have to eat a lot of calories to maintain my body weight, right? And maintain my muscle mass. However, I definitely do best when I eat them in a kind of a tightened window, right? So usually lunch is around somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock. And I always, when I work out, it's always right before lunch. So it's fully fasted. So my workouts are going to be, somewhere around 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock. And then, and I'm doing upper body, lower body, high intensity resistance training. Sometimes I'll go out and do some sprints. I'll run. My neighborhood is usually a warm-ups, and it's about a mile run, right? So I'll run that and come back. And then I'll hit the weights after that, and then I'll break it. And so when I break my fast, I usually take amino acids first. So I have a product called Amino Strong, which is essential amino acids. And so I put that in water. It tastes good. It's like a fruit punch flavor, and I get immediate amino acids right into my muscles. And so usually I'm fasted for 18 hours. My growth hormone is really high, because as you're fasting, your insulin goes down, your growth hormone goes up. And growth hormone has to do with healing and repair, right? And it helps you build lean body tissue. It helps with autophagy. It helps with skin, with immune function, right? And it's great hormone to have when you are exercise boosts it, and so does fasting. And so it really helps with building lean body tissue as long as you fuel well after you finish your exercise, right? And so I take the amino acids, and then about 10 minutes later, I'll have, my protein shake or leftovers from dinner or whatever it is that I'm eating that day for lunch. And so I usually eat a pretty good sized lunch and then a pretty big dinner. And usually dinner's around, most days around 6 o'clock, right? And that usually I'm done eating by 7 o'clock. That's my typical goal, is no more food after 7 o'clock, because I want at least 3 hours to fully digest it before I go to bed. And I usually go to bed around 10 or 10:30. So I want to make sure I'm fully digested. So that way I get the best quality sleep. So from a nutrition perspective, that's what I have.
That's awesome. You kind of answered the question, but I want to run into a couple of questions that people have asked. And one of them is from Ashley. She said, I know that you work out in a fasted state. I've heard you state that on several podcasts. I've tried to work out fasted, but I'm having a really hard time working out in a fasted state. What do you suggest? And have you done any podcasts on this topic? I have done a couple podcasts on this topic, and there's one, number 307 with Thomas DeLauer that I did. We actually did 2 together, and we really talk about building muscle while still doing intermittent fasting. So you can go back and listen to those episodes. But I love that you work out in a fasted state. So give any other tips that you have that, why is she feeling like she can't work out? I can't work out if I do eat. So that's a hard question for me to answer, because I'm like, if I eat, forget it. There's no chance I'm even going to work out. So It's hard for me to relate to that question.
Yeah, totally, Chantel. I used to feel like that back when I was a personal trainer in my early 20s. It was like I had to eat and then I would work out. I don't know how I did that. And your body will adapt. Some people will adapt. If you started eating kind of pre-workout, your body would actually adapt to it over time, just like you'll adapt to fasted exercise as well. Your body will adapt as long as you are getting enough quality calories, particularly protein, during your eating window, right? That's so important. And then on top of that, for some individuals, they may need more electrolytes, right? So taking a little bit of salt in your water can be really, really helpful. There's a company, Element. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Chantel, but they have a great kind of, it's like a pre-workout drink, no calories in it. It's got sodium, potassium, magnesium. Those are the main electrolytes that it has in there. And, it's flavored with like stevia or something like that. So it kind of gives you like a great pre-workout drink. That's just electrolytes. So you're still in the fasted state. You might get a slight increase in insulin just because of the flavoring, and they have an unflavored as well. But most people feel great. In fact, I'll drink that before I work out, and I feel like I do better, right? My workouts are better, especially if I'm doing a really intense workout. It's a hot day. I didn't mention this before, but I have a sauna, infrared sauna, and I actually do my Bible reading and worship in the sauna in the morning, right around 8:00. So I usually wake up at 6. I've tried like Bible reading first thing when I wake up. For whatever reason, my mind wants to like start getting work done. So I get work done, and then my kids are getting up. I say hi to them and everything. And then I go do my Bible in the sauna. Right. And so I'm sweating, so I'm letting out electrolytes. And so for me around, 11, 12 o'clock, I'm taking back in some electrolytes to prepare for my workout, right? And so I'm getting those electrolytes back. I don't feel like I need them, but I just noticed that I do feel like I perform better. So for some individuals, that may be key, is getting a little bit of electrolytes in. And I think that can be really helpful. But I would say the biggest issue I see is that people are just not eating enough calories during their eating window. And so therefore they're already in like a calorie deficit, and, they're just not used to eating bigger meals in a consolidated eating window. So that's what I would try to focus in on, right? Making sure you're consuming enough calories, keeping your blood sugar stable during your eating window, and then, fasted exercise, and then staying hydrated, right? And particularly hydrating before you work out is super important.
Hey guys, I really want you to join our intermittent fasting and OMAD Facebook group. We're doing tons of giveaways right now for posting your before and after pictures, and just for posting a question in there. We're giving away free protein shakes, some digest aid, all kinds of fun stuff. So please join our intermittent fasting and OMAD Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. Well, I want to talk about pre-workout for just a second, because I've actually read so many things of some of these pre-workouts. I saw one that had 7 servings of caffeine in it. So I think it's really important to have a good pre-workout that doesn't have all the chemicals and all the junk, and also doesn't have 7 servings of caffeine to it. So tell us about the pre-workout you do and the benefits of the amino acids of how that really helps you.
Totally. Well, caffeine, it can be a great ergonomic aid, right? It can be amazing for improving your performance. However, just like anything, your body will actually adapt and habituate. So, you might do it, you might cycle it. It's actually a really good idea to cycle it, so your body's constantly adapting and changing. So maybe if you're working out 4 days a week, you might do caffeine before your workout 2 days a week, let's say, right? And then not, the other 2 days. So your body's still, it's not creating a dependency on that caffeine. So that's key. And again, like not 7 servings. You got to watch out. A lot of those pre-workouts, again, tons of caffeine, a lot of sugar, oftentimes, over sweetened. So even if something doesn't have sugar in it, but it's just like got a really sweet taste to it, that is going to impact your insulin, right? I know for myself, other than that, like a little bit of stevia in this kind of, element drink, right? With the electrolytes, I seem to be fine with that. However, if I were to let's say, put a bunch of stevia in my herbal tea in the morning or in my water or something like that, I'll have cravings throughout the morning. So you really want to be careful with that. And your fasting window is a really good time to reset your dopamine receptors, right? And your dopamine receptors, they love the sugar, right? They love the sweet taste. And there's nothing wrong with that when it's kept under control, right? When you have it, at just, let's say, in your eating window. But outside of your eating window, you don't want to overstimulate your system. So I would recommend doing your best to avoid sweetened beverages, right? As much as possible. And you might do caffeine, but like 1 to 2 servings, right? And if you're feeling jittery, if you've noticed that caffeine causes more cravings, okay, that's a sign you're overdoing it. Okay. If you drink a cup of coffee, for example, you actually should feel really good, right? So you should feel great. You should feel like you perform better. It should actually help you fast longer. If it's doing that, then it's supporting you. If you notice that you can't, that you have more cravings, you're feeling jittery, you have brain fog, you're feeling irritable, okay, that's a sign that it's not supporting you. So you need to back down on that. And also putting actually a little bit of salt, right? Sea salt or something like that in your coffee or in whatever your, caffeinated choice is, green tea, that can be really beneficial as well because, even though the research isn't, it's not definite that caffeinated beverages, we used to think that they dehydrated you because they're quote unquote diuretics. The research isn't actually clear on that, but what we do know is that they will pull some electrolytes out of your system. So adding back a little bit of salts can be really helpful. And you could even just take a little bit of salt and put it on your tongue. And it can be as simple as that. So doing something like that, just making sure you're hydrated before your workout is always super important. A little bit of electrolytes can go a long way, particularly salt, sodium being the most important one, pre-workout. That will help. And then again, you work out. And then it's a really good idea to get some free-formed amino acids, right? You don't have to do this. There's a lot of people that do amazing just eating, whole foods, right? So it's not something you have to do. But if you want just a little bit more of an edge, okay, taking some free-form amino acids, especially if you've had digestive issues too, I will say that. If you've had issues with, just digestion in general, then taking some free-form amino acids, they really bypass the digestive system and get right into your system and turn on muscle building, right? And fat burning. So that can be really helpful. And you want to get essential amino acids. There's a lot of supplements out there that just have branch chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, but you want all the essential amino acids, and that will also have the branch chain amino acids in there as well. So leucine being the most important for muscle building. And so, you should be able to get a good quality essential amino acid and take that right after your workout.
What is the brand that you like the best for pre-workout and for amino acids? Yeah.
So for the pre-workout, I use the Element. That was started by a friend of mine, Rob Wolf, and you can find it's LMNT. And it's basically mostly sodium. It's got potassium and it's got magnesium in the right ratio. I think it's got like one serving stick has like 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 50 milligrams of magnesium. And this was all done based on the science, right? They just looked at the science for performance. And what they've also found is that, taking that about an hour before your workout really increases, your overall blood volume. So you have more blood volume and you're able to bring more oxygen to the cells. It reduces fatigue, improves endurance, improves mental clarity when you're exercising, things like that. So that's the Element, and they have it in unflavored as well as flavored. Okay. My kids love it too, right? So I give that to them. My kids are athletes, so they drink it. They love it. And then after workout, I have one called Amino Strong. And you can find that on my website, on my store. It's a very popular product. People love it. It tastes, it's flavored with stevia. It's easy to drink. And it's got all those essential amino acids, again, in free form, really easy for your body to assimilate and start going to work, rebuilding your muscle tissue right after you finished with your workout.
Well, let's talk a little bit about digestion, because I think that some people are having their biggest trouble with digestion. So let's give the best digestion strategies for fat burning.
Yeah, for sure. So many people are. And what I find is that a lot of people are not producing enough stomach acid, bile, and pancreatic enzymes. So here's a quick at-home test that you can do. The first test is this. You eat a steak. Okay. So get a 6-ounce steak. Eat a steak. You can put salt on it, but don't eat any vegetables with it. Just a steak. And then see how you feel for the next 3 or 4 hours. You should feel great, right? You should feel great. You shouldn't have acid reflux, any digestive issues. You should feel very mentally clear. It's a lot of good protein and healthy fats. If you're noticing that you have indigestion, acid reflux, gas, bloating, you feel like you've got brain fog, you feel irritable, right? Anything along those lines, that's a sign it's probably sitting in your stomach. You're not able to break it down effectively because you're not producing enough stomach acid. So that would be a sign we need to support your stomach acid, right? And I'll come back to supporting that. The second test is a fat bomb test. This is where if you just go on Google and you search in fat bombs, you'll see all these different recipes. It's basically like 250 calories of coconut oil and chocolate, like dark chocolate, right? It's got very little carbohydrates, maybe a little bit of fiber, mostly fat, little to no protein. So you consume that and you see how you feel over the next few hours. If you feel, again, sluggish, if you feel like you've got pain in your gut, if you have acid reflux, if you've got gas, bloating, anything along those lines, if you have diarrhea right after that, that's a sign you're not producing enough bile. Bile is key for emulsifying the fats, breaking them down. It's also antimicrobial, helps really clean the small intestine. So we'll come back to what we need to do for that. The third test is the broccoli test. So this is where we consume we steam broccoli and we consume broccoli. Again, you can put salt on it, but nothing else, just a bowl of broccoli. And you consume that and you see how you feel over the next few hours. Again, if you've got gas, bloating, right, you just don't feel like you digested that well, you're fatigued, you have brain fog. Okay. These are signs that you're not producing enough enzymes and they usually go together. You have too much bacteria in your small intestine when they should be in your large intestine, something we call small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so they're fermenting and breaking down the fibers that are in that broccoli too quickly, right, before it gets down deeper into the digestive system. So if going back to the steak test, if you failed the steak test, right, you didn't feel good eating that steak, here are things you can do. One is take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in water and drink that. If you notice that you have pain, like sharp pain in your stomach when you do that, that's a sign you may have an ulcer, right? So you may have a stomach ulcer. If you have a stomach ulcer, you want to make sure you're coming off of any sort of NSAIDs, right? Like ibuprofen, Tylenol, anything like that. Make sure you're coming off of that. Those are linked with ulcers. So that's really important. And if you have an ulcer, some things that can be really helpful would be ginger tea. Licorice root tea, slippery elm is another great herb for it. Aloe vera, drinking aloe vera on a regular basis. Those would all be really good. And oftentimes an ulcer can be related to an H. pylori infection. So you may have an infection in your stomach. So it'd be really good to seek out a functional health practitioner if you're noticing that just drinking a little bit of apple cider vinegar causes pain. Diluted apple cider vinegar in some water causes pain in your stomach. So I'm not talking about your mouth or your throat, right? In your stomach, the pit of your stomach. So with that said, that is going to be about 10% of the people that fail the stomach acid test, the steak test. The other 90% don't have an ulcer, but they're not producing enough stomach acid. So things that help are actually taking apple cider vinegar with meals. So taking a tablespoon or two of apple cider vinegar and let's say 4 ounces of water will help to naturally bring more acid into your stomach. And the apple cider vinegar will actually trigger your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve is vagus is Latin for wanderer, travels from your brainstem down into your viscera, including your stomach, and helps with the production of stomach acid. You can also chew on some ginger root. So just get some ginger root. It's very bitter, but you chew on that and the bitterness stimulates the vagus nerve, which stimulates stomach acid production. So you can do something along those lines. You can even just actually get some water in the back of your mouth and gargle. I know it sounds kind of funny, but just gargling as intense as you can for about, let's say 2 minutes, a minute or two, maybe 10 minutes before you eat, okay, can actually stimulate that vagus nerve, which will help stimulate the production of stomach acid. So all of those things can help. And then, drinking ginger tea, a lot of the things I already talked about can be very helpful. For some individuals, you may need a supplement. It's called betaine HCl. And you may find it with like isolated where it's just betaine HCl. You may also find it in supplements where it's combined with things like digestive enzymes, ox bile, stuff like that. So on my website, we have a number of different types of betaine HCl types of supplements, but that's what you're looking for. And we want to find the right amount of betaine HCl for you. So you can repeat the steak test where you do the steak. Okay, this time you take, let's say, a capsule of the betaine HCl, and you see if you feel better. If you feel better, that was the right amount for you. If not, if you still didn't feel good, then you need to increase your dosage until all of a sudden you notice when you eat that 6-ounce steak, you feel good. You feel like you digested it well. So that's your stomach acid. With bile, okay, things that really help bile are things like dandelion root. Okay, ginger tea. I mean, all the things I talked about for stomach acid are actually very good for bile flow, but dandelion is really good for that. Also, artichokes, radishes. So just eating some radishes, having artichokes. I mentioned that Mediterranean salad that I eat. Artichokes in there. Artichokes are one of the best things for supporting bile flow. Radishes are really great, right? So doing radishes, munching on some of those can be really, really helpful. Almost anything bitter. We say bitter is good for your liver. So if you're consuming anything bitter, the bitterness is going to really help. So we're talking about things like parsley, right? Parsley is bitter. Dandelion, obviously, very, very bitter. Ginger, very bitter. So those things are all really great for bile flow, right? And that will help with supporting bile. And then also on top of that, you may need some supplements that have things like ox bile in them, right? So already have some bile, especially if you don't have your gallbladder. A lot of people think your gallbladder produces bile. It doesn't. It stores bile. Your liver is what produces it. So you want to support your liver with these kinds of herbs, right? You can also get some bile salts, things like choline, taurine. You'll see that in different supplements. For example, I have one called Bile Flow Support, right? Obviously, by the name, you know it's helping bile, and it has choline in it. It has taurine in it. It has a lot of these bile salts, which thin the bile. It has dandelion in it as well, that thin the bile and help the bile flow more effectively, right? So that's really helpful. And then when it comes to digestive enzymes, just getting a really good, full spectrum digestive enzyme blend. A lot of people just notice that they feel a lot better. In some cases, adding some probiotics can really support all these areas. So probiotics can be really helpful. So those are great things to start out with and try and see if you notice improvement. If not, there's something that you're missing. And I would recommend seeking out a functional health practitioner that can do a little bit more of a deeper dive. And you can tell them, hey, I did the steak test. This is what I found. I did the broccoli test. This is what I found. And that will help clue them in to what's going on. And there may be certain infections, parasites, certain bacterial infections, fungal infections that are in your gut that you just need to clear out first. And then you'll start to really notice the benefits.
Hey guys, I'd love for you guys to listen to a podcast that we did about the side effects from wine and the differences between natural wine and traditional wine. So go to chantelrayway.com/wine and you'll see transcripts, you'll see some different episodes. But here's the thing, you can get your penny bottle now of dry farm wines and make the decision that if you're going to have wine, to make sure you have the most natural, healthy wine in the world with no additives, only natural ingredients. All the other wines out there have so much sulfate, so much sugar. Why put that poison in your body? So get your penny bottle now at chantelrayway.com/wine. Well, I think a lot of what you just said answers this question, but we have a question from a listener that's from Natalie Calfat. She says, I started intermittent fasting in OMAD about 8 months ago. It was mainly for the purpose of breaking my obsession with chocolate and giving my internal organs a break from constantly being involved in the digestive process. I've learned that one meal a day is my body's ideal intake. And whenever I step outside of that to 2 meals, which is rare, I regret it because I end up not feeling well and additionally fatigued. Is this common or uncommon, Natalie?
Wow, that's really interesting. So if you feel really great just eating one meal, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's great. Now, eating 2 meals, your body may just not be used to it. Maybe a new stress on the system. It's kind of like how when somebody starts fasting, if they're used to eating that big 8 a.m. breakfast, like for me, before I started fasting, I would eat, a big breakfast, oatmeal or whatever it was. And, this is many years ago. And so in the beginning, it felt weird because I wasn't getting that big breakfast in. So I felt more hungry. right? Even felt a little bit fatigued and things like that. But after a few days, I noticed that my body adapted and I just felt significantly better. And this is what I see as a common pattern. So that may be the case. If you're used to eating one big meal and you feel great eating one big meal, you're not having an issue with stomach acid, bile, or digestive enzymes because you needed all those to metabolize that one big meal. So I think it's just a new stressor on your body because you're not typically eating two meals. And now you ate a meal at a time when you're not normally eating a meal. And it was a little bit of a stressor on your system. I think that's probably playing the biggest role in that. I think if you did it more regularly, you would not quite have as much fatigue. However, finding your kind of ideal zone is a great idea. And that's kind of basically what you've done with the one meal a day. So I think that's really helpful. But obviously, supporting your body's ability to produce those digestive juices before, if you're going to eat that second meal, would be very helpful because your body's not used to producing those, the digestive enzymes and the stomach acid at that particular time. Okay. Meal timing is key. The more you can kind of get your meals in a certain zone and train your body to be ready to eat at that, in that particular window, the better your body should be at breaking it down and digesting it. Okay. It's kind of fits into your circadian rhythm. And so if you throw in like an unexpected meal or something like that, you may need to wake up your digestive system, right? Because it's not used to being awake at that particular time. And so doing like a little shot of, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and 4 ounces of water can help wake it up, or chewing on some ginger root or something like that. The bitterness there will help wake it up and get it better.
All right. 2 more questions. Katie Shannon says, I lost 11 pounds in month 1, 3 pounds in month 2. Is this normal? Kind of wondering if my slow conversion to essentially a daily OMAD might actually be stalling my weight loss as there's less variation.
Well, I imagine she started like a whole lifestyle plan. She probably started doing intermittent fasting like you teach, Chantel. She probably dropped a lot of carbohydrates. And when you do that, so I'm making an assumption that that's what she was talking about. So when you do that, your body, you actually start losing water weight. So when you store more glycogen, more stored sugar in your system, that stored sugar also has water with it. So a lot of people will notice pretty quick weight loss and then it plateaus. And that's because they're losing a lot of water weight in the beginning. And then they get really into the fat burning. Right. So then their body starts burning fat and it's not quite as fast of a weight loss as when they were losing that initial water. So I think it's totally fine. 3 pounds in a month is great. So I think you're right on track. I would just continue making sure that, you're following a good eating plan, a good consolidated eating window. I think she said OMAD. I may have picked that up or not. I'm not sure. And then making sure you're exercising. Keeping your stress under control, really prioritizing good sleep. That's so important. And if you're doing those things, it's going to progressively, the weight's going to progressively come off.
All right, this next question is from Lee Ann Foster. Does anyone have any experience or evidence on whether consuming apple cider vinegar during a fast affects your insulin? Thanks for any advice. Looking for ways to up my water intake during a fast, but sometimes plain water is so boring. Which this is a funny question because I'm thinking she's saying, like, to me, I hate apple cider vinegar. So like, I don't get it. Like, are you trying to add that into your water? Or I think what she's saying is number one, does it affect your fast? And then 2, like, is there anything I can do with my water that's not going to break my fast? So I think
this is a really good question. I'm glad you asked it because apple cider vinegar actually is a postbiotic. There's no calories in the apple cider vinegar that you're going to consume and elevate your blood sugar. It's actually a postbiotic, meaning that the bacteria have broken it down and they've created very, very, very small, little polyelectrolytes and different compounds that act as postbiotics, acetic acid, for example. And this actually helps with healing your gut lining, supporting your gut lining, and supporting your gut bacteria. So for a lot of people, they actually feel a lot better doing a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water. Now, again, I'm like you, like, I don't necessarily think that that's going to like create great flavor, right? However, actually doing that can be really, really supportive for your fast. You may notice that you feel better because you're supporting your gut lining and your gut microbes during that period of time, right? And so with this sort of postbiotic. So I think that could be really, really helpful. You have to try it out for yourself and see what you notice. Outside of that, you can do herbal teas, right? So you can do, and I don't know your thoughts on that, Chantel, but different herbal teas can be great.
Fine with it.
What's that?
I'm fine with it. I think that what happens is, there's some people out there that are so fanatical. Like they'll say, like, if you have, and I really just have green tea with, like, this is my go-to. It's actually hibiscus tea and green tea combined with no sugar, nothing added. But some people will be like, oh, hibiscus tea is not good. It breaks your fast. And to me, I'm like, listen, it doesn't break my fast. I've literally have one of those blood glucose monitors, right? And the continuous glucose monitors, and we've got tons of episodes on them before. I literally check my blood glucose. What does it go up 1 or 2? Like nobody, I'm at 80. Like if it goes from 80 to 81 to 82, like they get so caught up in like things that it's like, and make such a big deal about it. And it's like, listen, if this green tea with hibiscus raises my blood sugar by 1 point, I'm happy for that to happen. Like I'm not.
And if you're wearing a CGM, and you drink something and it goes up 1 point, you don't even know that had anything to do with the drink, right? Yes. Because as you'll see, if you're watching that, it's going up 1 or 2, dropping 1 or 2. Like this is just a continual pattern that's happening all the time in the body. So it had no impact on your blood sugar. And really the way that you'll know if something is breaking your fast is, does it increase your cravings? If you're noticing that your cravings go up, your fatigue, you have more fatigue, you have more irritability, you're noticing these kinds of, think about like a hypoglycemic or somebody that's when their blood sugar is going down, they start to not feel good, right? They start to feel more dizzy. They have more cravings, they're irritable, right? Nauseous, different things like that. You may notice some of those types of symptoms if you're consuming something, that, for example, would break your fast. Okay. Like for me, if I have stevia in something during a fast, all right, even though there's no calories in there, I notice that I just don't feel as good. I have more cravings. So that's telling me that I'm getting an insulin response, and then that insulin's dragging down the blood sugar, right? And then I'm getting into a little bit more of a hypoglycemic effect, because the insulin is also going to stop my body's ability from producing ketones. So I don't have that alternative fuel source. So that's the key. Do you notice more cravings or less? Do you feel like it makes it easier to fast, right? For a lot of people, herbal teas, warm beverages in general, very soothing on the system, trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, help you move your bowels more effectively, right? Which is actually very helpful for the fast. And, people notice that they just feel like it's a lot easier to fast when they have the warm beverage, right? So a warm herbal tea.
All right. One last question. This is from Nikki Mazik. She said, I did a 39-hour fast Sunday through Tuesday. After that, I kept my eating window at 6 hours. I find that I'm to the point of eating in a regular 6-hour window post-fast that I'm way hungrier all day long than I was pre-fast, to the point that I'm almost a little bit shaky. It's like my body doesn't like to lose weight and wants me to eat. Does that make sense? I also lost 5 pounds overnight, and I thought it was just water at first, but I'm still 5 pounds down from last Saturday. Nikki.
Yeah, amazing. So number one, that's awesome. Be able to do a 39-hour fast like that. So that's fantastic. Discipline, willpower, and just setting to your goals and sticking with it. So you should be really proud of yourself. And then when you start eating, your body's going through these windows where it's like, okay, I'm in a time of famine. I need to hunker down. I need to reduce my, energy. I need to become a lot more efficient with my energy. I need to stop growing and repairing. And so when you start to eat, now you're telling your body, okay, food's coming in, right? And it is actually very important to refeed well, right? And so it's not a bad thing for you to notice that you're hungry. That's okay, especially after doing a long fast like that. Do your best to eat to your satiation point. Try to make sure you're getting a lot of protein, a lot of minerals. So you might, put a good like sea salt on your food, or consume lots of dark green leafies or celery, cucumbers, grass-fed meats, seaweed, things like that have a lot of minerals in them. Minerals, as well as the protein and some healthy fats, will help create more satiety, right? Tell your body that, okay, I've had enough to eat, right? And so you want to kind of gradually, get back into eating, right? Wake up the digestive system, refeed your system. That way you're going to get enough insulin, right? And we talk bad about insulin, but you actually need insulin to produce enough sex hormone, right? Estrogen, progesterone, as well as to activate your thyroid hormone, right? So to take it from inactive to active form of thyroid hormone. So refeeding properly is fine. And if you're a little bit more hungry for the next few days after a fast, totally normal, right? And I mean, I am like that as well, right? So if I ever do an extended fast, very rare, but I'm absolutely a lot more hungry as I start to eat and refeed, right? And I think that's kind of a normal, natural signal. Now, I would say the key would be creating some sort of a routine, right? Where you may do like a weekly 24-hour fast. You may do, just trying to create some sort of a routine, setting up your meals where you're just observing your body, seeing how your body is responding, and then feeding it appropriately, right? Doing feasting and fasting, right? In kind of like a set pattern that you have some control over.
I'm sorry, I do have one more question. She said, this is Tammy from Michigan. A friend of mine is very thin and she's always tired. She eats healthy, but I suggested she tried fasting, but she's adamant that she doesn't want to lose weight. I suggested that if she ate more in her eating window, that she shouldn't lose weight. Would that be good advice? So
Absolutely.
Most people listening, this is someone very thin.
Yeah. So I'm somebody who is huge on it. I'm a fasting evangelist, just like you, Chantel. And so I'm huge on fasting, but I've never once tried to lose weight. In fact, my whole life I've tried to gain weight. So I'm somebody who actually found fasting because I had irritable bowel syndrome. And it was the only thing that I could do to actually heal my gut, right? So it was just something natural that came, and nobody was even talking about intermittent fasting. This is back in 2005. But ever since then, I've realized how amazing it is for helping me preserve lean body tissue. But you're absolutely right. Making sure you're eating enough during your eating window. For me, I'm somebody who can eat a large meal and still feel good, right? So I can do 2 large meals. Other people need, other lean people may need 3 meals, right? They may need 3 meals over, like, let's say, an 8-hour eating window, or they might even be able to tighten it into a 6-hour eating window, but they just aren't able to get enough calories. They get full. So they need to break it into 3 meals in that 6-hour window, right? Let's say, like, if it was me, I would do 1 o'clock, let's say 3:30, 4 o'clock, right? And then 6 o'clock dinner. And so they might need to do that. And consuming enough protein is really important. And then also doing resistance training, doing strength training will help you keep the weight that you want to keep, your muscle mass, right? You want your lean body tissue, your muscle mass, your bone tissue. So doing some resistance training at least 3 days a week, like 3 or 4 days a week, and then incorporating the intermittent fasting can be really helpful. Depending on the individual, if she's a very lean menstruating female, we may only do an intermittent fast twice a week. We have something called crescendo fasting, where we'll do, let's say, a 16 or 18-hour fast on 2 days, non-consecutive days. Because again, it's a stressor on the body. So maybe Monday and Friday, for example, or Wednesday and Saturday. So she might start with something like that. And on the other days, she's only doing a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast. Okay. And breaking it and eating in a 10 to 12-hour eating window. And then those 2 days a week, she's trying to push it out to 16 to 18 hours. So she gets a little more autophagy, right? Breaks down a little more of these damaged mitochondria. She gets deeper cellular healing during, those days than she does on her normal, eating pattern. So we might do something along those lines. So depending on the individual, again, their body fat, their hormonal tendencies, their stress levels, their activity levels, we can find the appropriate fasting window that's going to really help them thrive.
Love it. Well, this has been amazing. David, thank you so much. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I agree 100% with everything that you said today. I feel like we're so dialed in on the same page. So tell listeners about your books, about some of your free products, and about anything that you want to share with them.
For sure. Well, I have my book, The Fasting Transformation, which is really the complete guide to really understanding all the different science behind fasting, what it's doing in your body, how to put it into practice. So we go into intermittent fasting, partial fasting, and extended fasting. So amazing book right there, easy to read. So you'll get a ton out of that. And I also have a great podcast. Actually, Chantel, I've had you on before. It's the Functional Nutrition Podcast that you guys can check out. And also I have a free guide as well. If you go to my website, there is a free guide. It's for the Cleanse Your Liver Now guide. And Chantel, I could give that to you if you want to put that in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people out there that are dealing with sluggish bile flow. I see that all the time. Congested bile ducts in their liver. So many women getting their gallbladders taken out, particularly women more than men. And that doesn't need to happen. And so we have a bile, or we have a gallstone flush in there, right? An actual recipe for how to follow a gallstone flush. We also have all different strategies for helping support your liver so you can really optimize your digestion and your fat burning.
Love it. Well, you guys stay tuned. We've got another episode in just a few. Bye-bye for now.